So I'm going to make it clear that in this video, I'm probably going to be talking about things that pertain to American wrestling fans. So if I am way off on some of the things that I'm saying in terms of like prices or anything like that, do correct me in the comment, because I will appreciate that and I will admit when I am wrong. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting one and potentially a long one. So strap in, people. Hello and welcome to FTTR, I am Hugh McQuaid, and today we are talking about a just overall topic. We are not talking about something necessarily specific, we are talking about, is it too expensive to be a wrestling fan in 2025? And I can answer that question very easily by just saying yes, because everything is expensive right now. But we're going to be looking at the industry as a whole and some of the things that maybe are pricing fans out of cool experiences and following what they want to follow. But before we do, please subscribe, please like this video, please comment your thoughts down below and I'll try and reply to every single one of them as we dive into this. Starting with what started this, what made me want to cover this in the first place, and that was, as you can tell by the thumbnail, the ESPN and WWE deal that has just gone through. This is, to my understanding, it is going on ESPN Plus, I do believe, which is a sort of streaming service. I imagine it's probably like BT Sport is here in the UK, kind of like a subscription service for sports, except you will only be getting the pay-per-views, the PLEs, for $29.99 US. In the UK, that works out at around 22 quid. That, to me, was the big red flag. That to me sort of like might be the straw that breaks the camel's back in terms of consuming WWE for how I believe an American audience probably feels about that. Because if you got to think about it, we as UK fans have it very, very lucky. We are very lucky that we just get Netflix and we have the entire library of WWE content and their new pay-per-views for, I think, it keeps going up, but I think Netflix is now like $6.99 if you want the very standard tier with ads, which is the one that I pay for. And most of the time you don't pay for that for WWE, you pay for that for other stuff like Stranger Things and like Sandman, for instance. You're not necessarily paying for the content. But in the US, you have Raw is on Netflix, I believe SmackDown's on USA, I think, and NXT's on the CW, and now pay-per-views are going to be behind a subscription wall for ESPN. That, to me, is lunacy. Absolute lunacy, and I think that is what is going to cause fans to question, is it too expensive? Is this too expensive? Because if you're just watching WWE, you have to pay for Netflix, which you may just have for WWE, and you then have to pay for this ESPN Plus, potentially if it's not included in some sort of package, some sort of cable package that they have in the States. You're also going to have to pay for that on top of, you know, also keeping up with the other content that they put out. I think CW is in all homes or USA, one of them. I can't remember which one. But it's a lot. It is a lot to ask of you as a fan, and I think that's why it is sort of the straw that's broken the camel's back, because you look at what we're getting now with entertainment and streaming services, you are having to pick and choose what you want to watch. If you want to watch, case in point, Alien Earth, which is on Disney Plus. I no longer have Disney Plus, I got rid of Disney Plus, I'm going to get it back when the full show's out, watch it in a day, pay for a month, cancel Disney Plus again. You may find that with WWE fans in the US, or you may just find complete drop-off of fans because you have just insane hoops to jump through to get this. And I think people are going to be like, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to fork out this much money for, regardless of quality, this much money a month, one PLE, 5 matches. That is not worth the money. That is not worth the money. And I think that is what it all comes down to. It comes down to literally paying with your wallets, but speaking with your wallets as well. And that got me thinking, is just the entire industry like that? And I think that is the same for most industry, because if you want to follow a particular wrestling promotion, you have to follow, they usually have their own streaming service. New Japan, they have their own streaming service. AEW here in the UK are on Fight, AEW Plus. You have promotions on Triller, you have Wrestle Universe. There's so many different promotions out there that you have to kind of really look at what you want and what you want out of your pro wrestling. And that doesn't just come to streaming, that comes to stuff in the venues, that comes to ticket prices, merch prices. And when you've got an industry standard, industry leader as WWE, who are sectioning off a community of their fans who are just not wanting to pay the prices, I think it's a really weird position that the industry's in. I think it's really sort of, what's the word? Not panic stations, but I think there's a little bit of panic going on. And I think WWE at the moment, as the industry leader, they are just trying to get as much money out of consumers as humanly possible. And if that means separating all their content onto different platforms, that is wild. That is absolutely wild. And I think the biggest sort of example that I can give for this would be like, because they're all under the same umbrella, this would be like wanting to watch the MCU, but you have all the Thor films on Paramount Plus, you have all the Captain America films on Disney Plus, you have all the Iron Man films on Amazon Prime, and you have the Avengers films on Peacock, for instance, and you have this entire franchise that is just segmented out. I think what we really want is the return of the WWE Network. We want this all under one umbrella, but it seems like we're not going to get that. And like I said, UK fans, we are winning, because even though we don't have the incredible app that was the WWE Network, we have everything on Netflix in one place. I feel like this is just for US viewers, and US viewers, for lack of a better term, I feel like you're getting fucked. I feel like you're getting really fucked by some of the moves that WWE are playing here. And it's not good for the fan. And I think that brings into the question, the topic of this video, is it too expensive to be a wrestling fan in 2025? I think breaking that down, no. It is not too expensive to be a pro wrestling fan. I think it is too expensive to be a WWE fan, because you cannot shell out this much money for tickets, merch, everything like that. The merch prices for WWE are insanely priced, like so expensive. Ticket prices, again, I scroll through Facebook and the first thing that comes up is lowest tickets to Monday Night Raw for 125 quid in Birmingham. And I see that and I'm like, you know what? That's just too expensive. That's way too expensive. If I was like a full-blown WWE fan, I'd be like, Jesus Christ, like, what have we got to do to kind of get something, just something of value? This is like, if the quality was there, and this is where you come into sort of the conversation of quality versus quantity, $30, 22 quid is not enough. No, it is enough, is more than enough to justify a 5-match card. There is no chance in hell that £22, $30 US is worth a 5-match card, regardless of who you've got on there. You could put on, I don't know, The Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar versus Shawn Michaels versus Triple H versus everyone. You could bring back everyone and cram them on this card. That is way too much for a 5-match card. And I think that a 5-match card, it's doable. NXT proved that it's doable. NXT takeovers proved that it's doable. But that was on something you were paying $9.99 for a month, not something you were paying 30 quid for. And that is where the line is drawn. That price bracket of going up to $30 US is just, it seems like an astronomical jump for the premium live events. Premium live events that I don't think have been up to a good standard for a long time. A long time. Like over a year. I don't think they've been to a high standard. And I don't want to make this about tribalism, but if we're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about pay-per-views. We've got to talk about AEW as well and sort of how that is here, at least here in the UK, for a usually like 10 match card, 8 matches maybe, that are long, you know. People don't like the shows being long, but I'm personally a fan of it being long. And that is a price point of about $11.99 for 4 hours of just wrestling, hardly any ads. That to me is value for money. That is value for money. I think they are very, very cheap for what they offer. They offer, you know, packages. You've got, I think they did last year, was it like they do like a 3 bundle of Dynasty, Double or Nothing and All In, and they offer that for a really good price. I think that is worth it. You don't have all the fluff and you don't have all the nonsense that comes with WWE PLEs under that umbrella. And when I go back to sort of, I think it's too expensive to be a WWE fan. I don't think it's too expensive to be a pro wrestling fan, because for my money, the best money you can spend in terms of being a pro wrestling fan is going to an independent wrestling show. They have an incredible atmosphere, incredible views, incredible wrestling, incredible angles, and incredible storylines. I think people don't take into account the storylines that are produced for independent wrestling shows, and that to me is what I like the most, and what I get the most value for money out is independent wrestling. Even as much as I loved All In, the tickets were very, very expensive for the seats we had, and they didn't have a fucking screen, and I'm going to be angry about that for the rest of time. They were expensive. An independent show like Burning Hearts, for instance, I love Burning Hearts. I went to their show, 6 matches, 25 quid, amazing atmosphere, amazing live attendance, and you're comparing that to sort of attending a Raw Live for 125 quid, where you're going to get about 4 DQ finishes. It's what you value. Do you value the spectacle? Do you value the machine and everything like that? Or do you value in-ring storytelling, great characters? That to me is independent wrestling, and a great atmosphere. That to me is independent wrestling. And to me, as someone who follows a lot of independent wrestling, I don't feel like, it's too expensive for me to be a pro wrestling fan for what I enjoy. But I do feel like, as a US wrestling fan, a US WWE fan, I think that is expensive. I think it is too expensive to be a WWE fan right now. And I think we're going to reach the breaking point. I think there's only so far that TKO can push and milk the WWE for everything that it's worth. And I think this is kind of a switch. The new UFC deal, UFC are going to be airing on Paramount Plus, I believe. That is, good for the fans, because before that it was like you had to subscribe to ESPN and then pay an additional fee to get the pay-per-view, which, UFC is a real sport, so you can have like 5 knockouts within 2 minutes or something like that. So, that could all go awry and you could feel cheated out of your money. But now it's included with a subscription service of Paramount Plus. You feel like you have more value for money, because you may already have Paramount Plus to watch some of the stuff that's on there. Now you have UFC on there as well, and that's what I feel like WWE should have done when they partnered with Netflix in the US, that they could just get all their content onto Netflix be the home of WWE. But instead, going forward, I think in 2025, going forward, they will have this sort of shotgun blast against the wall of content that is just going to be everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. Not to mention AAA, which is going to be on YouTube for them as well. Yeah, in my opinion, it's too expensive to be a WWE fan, but it is not too expensive to be a pro wrestling fan. And that is why I encourage you to check out other means, other art forms of professional wrestling. For my money, if I had to give you some advice, the best pro wrestling subscription service that you can subscribe to is Wrestle Universe, in terms of the content that you get, the amount of content, the amount of promotions, the amount of great matches, the amount of value for money. It is second to none. Wrestle Universe to me is the best subscription service. Intuitive system as well, really good app. I'm a big fan of Wrestle Universe. I love Wrestle Universe, so check out Wrestle Universe. That is the best subscription service for wrestling, to me, hands down. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you think it's too expensive to be a wrestling fan in 2025? Let me know your thoughts, and I'll try to reply to every single one of them. Thank you all ever so much for your support, and have a nice day.